Hello, so this little video I will just try to rank the list etudes from the most easy to the most difficult. But before this I want to say that ranking stuff actually is very subjective and very difficult to do, because you could rank the list etudes according to harmonic difficulty or to technical difficulty or to musical difficulty, to put it in easy ways. So it's very difficult to rank everything together. And then another stuff is difficulty is very subjective and very personal, because some people have problems with some technical stuff, some people have problems with legato, with musicality. Everyone has different problems and everyone has therefore different difficulties in the etudes. And another thing is, depend on which level you bring a work, it will become more or less difficult. So if you are happy with a quite middle level, you play it with no mistake and you're happy with this, an etude can be easy. If you want to reach a certain point of execution like that you have in mind, it can become difficult or almost impossible. But I will give my ranking, and even with my own ranking I'm not always sure which one is more difficult, because this also can change every day actually. But anyway, I will try to give a more or less ranking from the easiest to the difficulty. And also I decided to put the more slower etudes in the beginning, because if you have a piece like a ricordanza where you have some difficult stuff, but for most of the time it's quite slow and you have time to do the stuff, you have some resting in the etude. That's for me more easy than an etude like number 10 or number 12 or number 2, who has no stop. And number 2 especially I think is very difficult because it's very short and there is no stop, and it's very difficult to get this etude on a high level, on a clean level, on a musical interesting level. Because it's so short and because there's no stop and because it's so fast. So that's the criterion I'm trying to follow. So the first of the set, the most easy etude is, I think everyone will agree on this, number 3, Paysage. Now there again you could argue that musicality is more difficult than technique. I don't think so, but maybe some people have this problem. So it's a very singing melodic etude. Of course, the difficulty here is the legato, the polyphony, having the voices coming out. Then the second one would be, I think, number 1, because it's a very short one, because there is no major big difficulty there, except it goes a bit fast. And then also what's important in order to be able to rank stuff by difficulty, if it's possible, it's to know the works on a very high level, right? So I played the 12 etudes for many years. Some I didn't play for some years, so I forgot them a bit, but basically I know the etudes. I did, by the way, recordings of I think 7 of them, so go on my channel, you will have some clean recordings of 7 of them, and I will continue recording the other ones. So number 3 on the list I think is Vision, and there it was a bit difficult to rank this one, because I'm not sure how difficult. It's quite difficult, but it's a bit less difficult than the other one, let's put it like this. It's this one here. Then number 4 would be Harmonie du Soir, and for the reason I said before, it's a quite slow etude, so I have a lot of time to rest, and then there are some difficult places, but I don't find them so difficult. again, this one is not, the difficulty there is really the legato, making the voice singing, having sound control, having the rubato control also is very important in this etude. Then number 5 would be ricordanza. It's a quite difficult etude, of course they are all very difficult, but I think it's after a bit more difficult than Harmonie du Soir. It's also an etude that is quite slow with resting paces. Then one that's also difficult to classify is number 7, Eroica, because it has some very difficult passages, especially the octaves in the middle. But there again, it's difficult to have the octave perfectly clean, but then in itself the octaves are not so difficult. After this one I would say Win the Yacht. So a tricky one, there are some very difficult passages like this jump in octaves at the end, but generally it's one of the feasible. Then number 8 I would put Chasse-Neige, although that's actually really one of the very difficult. So main difficulty there is an etude for chromatic scales, for tremolo, for jumps also, and jumps is one of the difficult things on the piano. Then one that I find very difficult is number 10. The number 10 is really tricky. There are like places that are really uncomfortable, especially for the big left hand problems. 10 and 11 between Mazeppa and number 2, because Mazeppa is a big, very long etude and very difficult and exhausting, and number 2 is also very difficult, even I think a bit more difficult than Mazeppa, but it's very short, so you need less energy to do number 2 than to do Mazeppa. If you finish Mazeppa, you are basically dead, and if you finish 2, you're exhausted, but it's fine. But I still thought, yeah, that's why I thought still Mazeppa is more easy, because you have more rest places, and it sounds more difficult than it is, and number 2 comes after. So Mazeppa. Then I said the 11th on the scale of difficulty, I would say, is number 2, because it's a very short, very intense, very dense etude, and also if you play too slow this etude, it's super boring. So I think you should really play like very exciting and very fast and nervous, and then it's getting almost impossible, this etude. And then the last one of the set, I think, is the most difficult for me, is Feux Follets. And I think there is for the same reason. I think it's one of the fast etudes. It's very fire. Feu means fire in French. And if you want to get this fire element, like in the scherzo of Chopin or this kind of stuff, like in Etude number 2, you need a certain speed, you need a certain excitement in the piece, and to get this on a very high level is also extremely difficult. And so this etude is not stopping. It's always tricky stuff in all directions, and the most difficult thing in this is double notes here. That I can play slow, it's fine, but I really struggle to get into the speed with this, and I think it's the case for most of people. I mean, this is difficult because I can play it more or less fast, but it's not really clean. I'm not satisfied with this, so that's why I think it's the most difficult etude. And actually, it's the most difficult piece I ever played. And if you compare again to Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto No. 3, of course, this is longer, so it's much more exhausting. There are tons of difficulties, so you can say Rach 3 is more difficult than Feux Follets. But if you take the same amount of page, if you compare relatively to the size, I would say Feux Follets is more difficult than Rachmaninoff 3, because most of stuff in Rachmaninoff 3 kind of fall into the hand. You can play it, and then the difficulty is to play everything together, but separate stuff are fine. And Feux Follets, actually, even separate stuff, even sometimes 5 bars, stays very problematic and are very difficult to master. So I hope I gave you the motivation to practice the etude at least. I think that the 12th set of the Liszt etudes are among the 12 most difficult pieces ever written for piano. Now again, you can debate for this forever and give me your opinion. I'm always open to listen to opinions. Try to be nice when you give your opinion. As I said in the beginning, it's very relative. Like for everyone, difficulty is different, and depending on what you focus your attention, the difficulty would be also different. Like you cannot say like a Bach fugue is as difficult as a Liszt etude, because it's two total different works. Like in the Bach fugue, you need to focus on totally different stuff than you would focus in a Liszt etude. And it's okay to say it's like this. In a Liszt etude, it's mostly technical. There are also etudes, so it's to practice technical difficulty, of course, also musical difficulty, because the Liszt etudes are also music pieces and amazing music pieces. But there are still etudes. Liszt had in mind doing this. I want to write difficult pieces. I want that it stays musical, and that I want to do music, not only technique. For this he wrote exercise. But yeah, they are based on technical difficulties and digital problems to solve and to overcome, and that's why he called them the transcendental, because you need to transcend yourself, you need to transcend technique, you need to transcend your barriers, your stops, your limits, to get able to play this kind of stuff, but also musically. And I also think this debate of music and technique is also a bit pointless, because these two stuff exist together, like technique, if you want to call it like this, or mechanic, or fingers, or how fast or how good you can play something is always connected with musicality. Both are not separated. So if I talk about technical difficulties, it means also the difficulty of making a forte just after a piano, or a piano after a forte. That's also technique, right? So yeah, I hope I gave you some indication and the motivation to play them. As I said, I played them all. Now some you saw it, I didn't play since very long time, so I didn't remember so well. But at least it gives you an idea of what it is. And see you next video.